Good evening. I am Steve Schutz, Cars on
Yeah.
Call.
Welcome to Cars on Call. I'm automotive journalist Steve Schutz here with trauma surgeon Stephan Moran and automotive consultant, expert, and collector Adam Sutson. We're all here, as always, together virtually. And this is episode 113. We've got a lot. No way can Cars on Call let the introduction of a new 4Runner go without commentary. So we're going to do that first. And Stephan, I know you got a lot to say about the 4Runner, and then the effing runner, and then we're gonna do car spotting. We have a great car, kind of a swan song. No, it's not. It's car spotting. Forget it. And
it already had its swan song. That was partly there.
We're doing. I don't know why mine would wander for a second. And then we've got trauma surgeon safety, of course. We've been doing rants, and these are things that are on our minds individually, and we just are just going to say it. So I started 2 weeks ago, and then Adams did his last week, and Stephan is going to do one today. So I'm sure it will involve safety, of course. I always like to take a moment to say that this is the only podcast where we've got a trauma surgeon who operated on many, many car crash victims and has done research on automotive crashes, automotive collisions. So,
and we have a gastroenterologist who's done a lot of scopes.
Yeah, that's got a lot to do with.
And a consultant who's owned a lot of cars.
It's got a lot to do with. Yeah, nothing brings up cars like colonoscopy.
Yeah. And Steve, I think Stephan's rant might tie right into the effing runner. I don't know.
Yeah. Wouldn't that be
it's
great?
too early to call.
Wouldn't that be great?
Yeah.
So the only thing better is if it talks about the Felicity Ace. But hey, the R8 just stopped production. Adams, you're gonna talk about that. And then we're gonna talk about Mansory. We were supposed to 2 weeks ago, we ran out of time. Mansory deserves some time from Cars on Call. So anyway, let's talk 4Runner. And for 2025, they're going to introduce a new one. And a lot of people are saying, hey, the new one or the current one that's going out, the 2024 model, is a 15-year-old model. And what I'm saying is, no, it's actually 21 years old, because the 2003 model has the same footprint and very similar engine. They did change the transmission, but it's very similar. So it's basically a 20-year-old car, and they're finally going to do a new one. There's pictures Stephan is bringing up of the new one, and the other ones are not projected.
It's a smorgasbord of photography there.
Yeah, wow. It's got a new interior. The interior has been the same, but basically this is all new. And again, the other one was
that to our graphics department. Can you bring that?
Well, let me see. All right,
yeah.
Let me do that again, because I thought I had it right.
Because it's worthy of full screen.
It should be full screen. No, it's not. We're having some technical difficulty here.
All right, let me just go through the specs, because this will set the stage. It's all new. It's the same platform as the new Tundra. Oh, there it is. The Tacoma, the Land Cruiser. It looks very similar, as you can see from this picture. It doesn't look that much different from the old one, but it is very different under the skin. It has no longer a 4-liter naturally aspirated V6 that was, for the record, very thirsty. The new one is going to be a turbo 2.4-liter inline 4, makes about 278 horsepower, which is a lot from a 4-cylinder. And you can get a hybrid. This is the first hybrid 4Runner ever. If you get a hybrid, you can't get a third row seats. I don't know why you'd want to get a third row seats in a 4Runner. It's so small, but they do offer it, and you can't get it with a hybrid. The current model starts at around 42,000 and maxes out close to 60. Expect the new one to be similar in price, probably a couple $1,000s for each model, more expensive. So that's the background. Stephan, launch. What do you think?
About damn time. So I mean, it's been disgraceful how Toyota, they're making a shit ton of money. Had they have not updated this 4Runner's platform. And so listeners, they understand about the 4Runner, the Sequoia, the Tacoma, the Tundra, and then a couple of the spinoff Lexus those. those are still old-fashioned body on frame, just like a pickup truck. So this thing, the underpinnings of this are the same as a pickup truck. And they've been using a pickup frame, Steve, that's basically 21 years old. So the thing, this 4Runner, which, you know, you see everywhere, they run forever, lots of young kids in them. They score horribly on the crash test. I mean, you imagine it's 21-year-old safety, a 21-year-old design. So they're really dangerous vehicles to put your loved one, to let your young kids drive around in them. So the new platform is called the TNGA platform that tell you to put this on. They've got a couple of them. And this is the shared platform with the Tacoma, Land Cruiser, Tundra, Sequoia. Well, it's a bunch of different steels and much better. And the new Toyota Tundra actually gets an outstanding and a very good rating from Insurance for Highway Institute for Safety. So it has the same type frame and body on frame as construction that this new 4Runner is going to have. So I would expect this 4Runner to finally enter the 21st century with except what it's going to have. It should have a good rating overall in all areas, rather than the marginal and the poors that it has now. So yeah,
you know, I'm
time.
I'm a little shocked at this car for a number of reasons. Primarily that the other one, after 21 years of very little change, even exterior, the facelifts were, you know, still recognizable. How did it maintain relevancy and sales? I mean, you know, there are a lot of car manufacturers that would be kicked to the curb as far as just being horribly outdated, but Toyota, hats off to however they adjusted their formula just enough to maintain profitability, viability, sales, and attractiveness to young people. I mean, I'm impressed.
Well, number one, they cost zero to maintain. They'll go like 300,000 miles. They're virtually indestructible, and they have that kind of like that Jeep sell a lifestyle look. Yeah, I drive a 4Runner, I kayak and I hike and I climb and I skydive and I go off-roading. Whereas really
I eat granola and am healthier than you are.
Yes.
Yeah.
But so they sell that whole lifestyle. They've done well with it. But the thing about a 4Runner is, you know, if you buy one, it's going to hold its value like a Tacoma, and the thing's going to run forever. And for a first vehicle purchase, I could see why people want it. In typical first vehicle purchases, they don't care about safety. You know, they're going for an emotional look. They're not, you know. So I'm glad that Toyota's finally getting there with this.
True. Yeah, it's worth noting for all the reasons that Stephan just pointed out. It's worth noting that not only is the current model that's outgoing, I think it's June when they stop production, not only is it popular, but it's very popular. Sales for the first quarter of 2024 were up 60%. People love it, and they're all getting in while the getting's good, and they're going to buy one as long as they can get this old one. Because again, it goes forever.
Does anybody else see, or is it, I've been on the road too long, does anybody else see a little bit of the side body sculpting reminiscent of the Vehicross, the lovable and laudable Isuzu?
A little bit.
And the little kick up at the C-pillar. I don't know. To me, I just see, now the front end is pure Toyota, but something about the side sculpting reminded me of that other car. But I think
here's another bit. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
The other big thing to understand that with the 4Runner is it's going to a multi-link rear end, so it's getting rid of a solid rear axle, and it's going to have wishbones up front. So it's going to handle much better, drive much better. So all around, this is a quantum leap for the 4Runner,
and folks, we're seeing that with a lot of former truck and truck platform type vehicles, like Steph was saying. They're just all becoming more streetable. I mean, the Maverick is a car with the back on it. The Santa Cruz is a car with a truck back on it, as is the Honda Ridgeline, and this is going that way as well. So good. It just means it'll ride better, not rattle your teeth out, and still be sort of rugged.
Yeah, the point that we've been making, and this is when we really started talking about 4Runners, which was 2 years ago. And what we talked about, and the thing that it needs to be It drives Stephan crazy. They're everywhere. If you start looking for 4Runners, you see them everywhere, because if they make one the first one was made in 1984, you can still see first generation 4Runners around, and then the second generation, third generation, very popular. They never die.
Yep.
All right, let's move on to Car Spotted. Adams, you had something interesting, and this is kind of a cool one.
Well, that particular vehicle, and Steph, I might want to take a look at some graphics if you get an opportunity. But this particular vehicle had 3 different iterations. It had a Gen 1 that was like a wedge looking vehicle.
And what vehicles this we're talking about?
I'm sorry, this is the Toyota MR2, or otherwise
Mr. 2.
The
Mr. 2.
Mr. 2, yeah.
Mr. 2.
And so when it came out, it was this wedge looking thing. And you see up there, it was sort of like the world's most reliable TR7. They were innovative enough, go Toyota, to have put a mid-engine 4-cylinder, and you could get it supercharged, not turbocharged, but supercharged in this particular model. And it was sort of a fringe element vehicle, very small and very buzzy. And then if you skip over the next graphic, I'll show you the Gen 3 car, which is this, I don't know, it just jumped over whoever it was aimed at. It was performance took a non-existent back seat. It had a very unusual look to me, and on that small of a vehicle, I'm fairly convinced that the designers were inspired by this next graphic, which is this mutant koi goldfish. Yeah, that to me, that's all I can see when I look at the MR2 is of the 3rd generation, but they hit it just right with the Gen 2. And this is the car I saw. And this one is finished in a delightful gray. This is the mid-90s version. I'm going to say 92 to 96. And you could get a non-turbo or a turbo. This is the turbo because you see that vent on the rear. And somebody has added these wheels. They're trying to look like Compomotive wheels. They probably aren't. But, this was like a 200 horsepower even, which was a lot out of a 4-cylinder in its day. And it had great performance, a 6-speed manual, good handling, hideaway headlights. It was pretty small. What do you guys think? When was the last time you even saw one?
I can't remember the last time I saw the Gen 2. I've seen some Gen 1s on occasion, and I kind of forgot about the Gen 2, but when I look at this Gen 2, this is like a miniature supercar look almost to it. Or a baby NSX, like you said, a tiny 308. It has aged incredibly well. What year is this car? Do you know, the Gen 2?
This one was introduced about, I could be off, 92, and I think it went away from this body style in 96.
Okay.
Well, not for very long.
That looks for a 20-year-old car, it looks great. And that's a good color on it. And what do they sell for, Adams? Do you know?
These cars have kind of caught on, not fully caught on. The Gen 1 and the Gen 3 Gen 3 is not caught on at all and probably won't ever. But these cars are a low-mile manual shift, one of these, well-kept, not modded to death, which a lot of them are. It's mid-30s. And that would be about as nice a one as you'd ever want. You could
So they go for more than an S2000.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I'm skeptical. All right. Well, this is, although it's funny, you just pointed something out, Stephan. It's true. We all think of, given our age, that the 90s was just 20 years ago. Well, it wasn't. It was 30 years ago.
Yeah.
But all right, the first generation, which was the mid 1980s MR2, was stupid and angular looking, and it looked very 80s. The 3rd gen, which was I think it's late 90s, early 2000s, was stupid but decent looking, like a K car, like KEI. And you've talked about K cars before, but it was just stupid. And this one's stupid and looks a little bit like a 308 or an SX. I don't know why you'd ever think about getting this over at S2000, Honda S2000. This is a stupid car.
Yeah, You know, to me, I mean, a Honda S2000 will probably run away from one. A well-tuned second gen S2000 probably run away from one. But I kind of like this car. I thought it was a bold enough move by Toyota. And when I mentioned the values exceed the S2000s, I'm talking about the best of the best, and they barely exceed. Your plain Jane high miler non-turbo car is probably a $8,000 car. I don't know.
Yeah,
60.
yeah. Here on Bring a Trailer, an 11,000 mile one, low miles, went for 47.5. That's the turbo, and the next turbo sold for at 43,000 mile turbo sold for 36. Was bid to 36,000.
There you
So,
go. Yeah.
but
The
yeah, I think
Super
this is
makes
for
sense to
somebody
me.
that's
The Super makes sense. The Super is a right size. It's not too small. This is too small, and the performance is not that great. It's too small and stupid.
But Adams would still look good in his Gucci. Adams would still look good in his Gucci loafers in this, you know.
Oh, thank you.
No, he won't. You got it. This is a flip flop car, not a Gucci loafer car.
You know, I will say something. I am a whopping 5'5" on my best day. I've sat in one of those. They're too small.
Really? Wow.
I'm telling you,
There's
they're
almost like a
light.
K car, huh?
Well, and I honestly, I don't fit in a S2000 that good. I mean, two people in the S2000 are bumping elbows, and it's similar in this, except you just don't have any other room in the interior.
Yeah, I'd take an S2000 over that, but
the reason you don't see these is they didn't sell well. The first gen sold pretty well. Second gen did not sell well. Third gen sold like nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, let's move on. I'm
Okay.
irritated by those. I'm irritated.
All right. This is turned into Steve's rant.
Yeah, it's my rant.
This is, yeah.
Oh, yeah. All right, Stephan, safety and a rant sequentially.
I'm going to do a safety rant here, and
are you going to combine them?
I've talked about this before.
Is that men without hats?
What's that?
Men without hats. They had safety dance. You're going to do safety rant.
Safety rant, safety dance. Okay.
I wish I'd.
Now, I've talked about this before that, I believe that there's no role for beta testing of automatic driving assistance systems, specifically the Autopilot and the full self-drive on our roads. And I'm going to expand on that a little bit today because I'm still pissed off about the way our government, National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, and I will throw Tesla in there, have handled the auto driving, self-driving. Well, recently, just this past week, so for listening to this podcast, so it'd actually be the week before when this podcast comes out, but there was a case, Walter Hung, Huang, sorry if I mispronounced that incorrectly, back in March of 2018 was driving his Model X, and he had Autopilot engaged, and he was playing a video game, and the Model X jumped over to the left because the lane markings were faded and hit one of those concrete barriers on interstate about 70 miles an hour. So he died immediately. The family on his behalf took it to court and were suing him in court for multiple things and taking on Tesla. And this is the first time that Tesla has settled out of court. The day before the trial, they settled the case, and it's sealed, a sealed settlement. And this is going to be very interesting because they had won their cases before with Autopilot, but not this one. In this case, if it had gone to court, would have clearly established precedents on all future cases. And I feel like they just finally cut their losses. But some interesting things that came out of this case and why I talk about we are not the role of beta testing. That's just not, it shouldn't be happening on our roads. Well, NTSB, National Traffic Safety Board, they investigate any death in motor vehicles that involve driver assistance systems, ADAS. So they want to see what's happening in these crashes when these systems are engaged, and are they to blame? And NTSB said that the Tesla Autopilot was partly to blame for the crash. They found specifically that Tesla's forward collision warning system did not provide an alert. And the interesting thing to understand about the Tesla They do not use LiDAR, and LiDAR is a form of radar. They rely on cameras. I'll talk a little bit about later the different approach of Volvo and Mercedes they believe LiDAR is absolutely integral to these advanced driving systems. Tesla does not use LiDAR. So LiDAR is like having your own little radar in your car that's getting additional information from the system. And as well, the automatic emergency braking system did not activate in his Model X. And the vehicle actually, when it got confused, the best way to put it, it actually accelerated and he hit the barrier at 70 miles an hour. Now, the NTSB also found the driver at fault, not fault, but partially to blame as well for being distracted. So the family filed a negligence and wrongful death case, and by extension, named Elon Musk on it. And part of their big case was they felt that Elon and Tesla were liable for repeatedly exaggerating the capabilities of Tesla's self-driving car technology. And this is where I really get pissed off, because these systems should not be called Autopilot as they are currently designed today. And we'll get more about what's in a name. Perception is reality. So they actually found some internal Tesla emails where the execs and engineers discuss how they'd become complacent while driving their Tesla vehicles with Autopilot. And they had switched some things on and off. And they described reading emails, driving down the road, checking their phones with the systems fully engaged. And they kind of bragged about it. And in the manuals and in the instructions from Tesla, it specifically states that you're to remain engaged. But what the Tesla does not have in the Autopilot is where it is monitoring you. Now, I'm going to pull up a screen share here, because I know I've been beating on Tesla, but I want to let me find it here.
Well, Stephan, beat away on Tesla as you go to look that up, because they are really the leader. They are forging the path for others to model and emulate.
Yes, exactly. So I'm going to escape out of here and share. But
let me jump in. This happened on the on State Highway 101.
Yes,
in Silicon Valley, and there was a video I saw of another Tesla that actually scraped up against the Jersey barrier in that same place on Autopilot. The Autopilot got confused by that one stretch, and a bunch of Patrick, my son, was living in Silicon Valley at that time, and people were talking about how Teslas were not able to kind of figure this one stretch of roadway out, and unfortunately it was fatal.
Well, that thing to understand is when the non-LiDAR systems, so systems that are just using cameras, the software is coded to ignore parked vehicles, because if the software can't process the information visually with these stationary vehicles. That's why you have some of these earlier collisions where they struck fire trucks that were parked on the side of the road or partially in the road. Now, I pulled up the screen here, and when you buy Tesla's full self-driving subscription, they actually have the word beta in there. And it is a hands-on feature that requires you to pay attention to the road at all times. Keep your hands on the steering wheels at all times. Now, if you subscribe to beta and it feels that you are not engaged, you can actually be booted out of the beta software. So if you disengage, I think it's 5 times, and the camera doesn't see you participating in driving, it will actually turn off the full self-driving feature for a couple of days, and then eventually all the way out. So,
Stephan, is that a fairly new development that they would limit your distraction frequency or time?
I didn't look back to see when they actually started that, because I could only get the new manual downloaded. And I don't know when. They've called it beta for a while, a couple years now. And I don't know when they started this negative reinforcement for drivers who weren't following the rules. With Autopilot, it doesn't engage in all this.
By the way, this is like, I'm looking at this like, this is so surreal. This is a full self-driving manual that tells you how to use it. This is like you buy a fully cooked meal and it tells you how to cook it.
That's a terrific comparison. And it would say on the package, fully cooked.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then it tells you how to cook it. And don't forget to cook it. If you don't cook it,
Yeah, right.
it's not going to be cooked meal. Like, what is this?
They're playing with the lexicon. You know, as we have said before, the phrase autopilot should be challenged to the ends of the earth. It's not autopilot. I mean, you guys
Isn't
are
this called fraud?
experienced. It's called fraud. It's auto
Yes.
fraud. But
Yeah.
you guys have spent a lot of time in aircraft. You know what an autopilot does
Right.
and is. This
It's,
isn't.
it's not self-driving if your hands are on the wheel. Okay. It
Yeah.
is self-correcting. But so anyway, so NHTSA always looks at these, and they looked at 956 crashes in which autopilot was initially reported to have been in use. There's been 40 investigations, accidents with Tesla, and there's been 23 deaths. So what's in the name? Perception is your reality. And this is what pisses me off. It's all about perception. You know, this is taunted as being fully self-driving autopilot. And I think it's a terrible name for their using autopilot on the lane correction and all that they shouldn't be done. Ford calls their system Blue Cruise hands-free highway driving. Enjoy the scenery in front of you. So what the Ford is on very limited controlled access highways, basically interstates, controlled interstates, and they'll show you which ones it works, is you can take your hands off the wheel, but it is monitoring your eyes. So if it sees you're not looking at the road, it's going to warn you make you put your hands back on the wheel. GM has theirs called Super Cruise, and GM has felt, and I really applaud GM for this. Did you hear that? I applaud General. You may not hear that again, but GM has felt that words really do matter in how we describe these systems. And that's why they said we need to alter the public's understanding of the differences eventually among automated, autonomous, autopilot. So what they're focusing on is when you do your GM Super Cruise, it's called hands-free, eyes-on. So what they're emphasizing is, yes, you can take your hands off, but your eyes are still on the road. So they're not using those words on purpose, and that's been the main of their campaign. And when you look at the brochures, it's hands-free, eyes-on. So it's hands-free driving. You're driving the car without your hands. That makes sense. Okay, so you're still engaged. You're looking at the road. You're not on your emails. And then the one that got the best was the Lexus Teammate with Advanced Drive, which is similar. It monitors you. Now, look, Volvo does not have it has lane correction and that kind of stuff, active cruise control, but they are working on what they want to call Ride Pilot. And that will only be initially rolled out in California. They're behind on that. And their Ride Pilot is truly autonomous, where you don't have to have your eyes on the road. And but they're not ready to roll that out yet. But they're using LiDAR, which can detect stationary vehicles. Now listen to Mercedes-Benz, also considered, of course, a big innovator in safety. Their system is called Drive Pilot, and that's ready to show for you under conditions that help secure a ride. Conditions include clear lane markings on approved freeways. So they're gonna decide, oh, how about I did thumbs up and you see that it popped up on the screen. And so they're designating kind of like Ford which roadways this will work on. Moderate to heavy traffic with speeds under 40 miles per hour. Okay. We know speed, crashes at higher speed, more fatalities, more injuries. Daytime lighting and clear weather. Driver visible by camera located above driver's display. So, Mercedes-Benz is basically going to have an autopilot for when you're stuck in a traffic jam on the interstate that's start, stop, 15 to 40 miles an hour. This thing will basically drive for you. You don't have to do it. So Volvo and Mercedes, the leaders in automotive safety, have gone the way with LiDAR, the radar. They want that in addition to the cameras. And they're being very slow to roll this out, and they're rolling out in a very controlled environment, contrary to what Tesla did. So for me, two things that piss me off. One is the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration needs to step in like the European Union has and to tell companies where you can use this, okay, and what the requirements for your vehicle are. I don't think there should be any self-driving autopilot car out there that doesn't have LiDAR. And the other thing to understand about LiDAR in the future, and Volvo already does this. So if a Volvo, so let's say it's starting to snow in your neighborhood, and your neighbor has a Volvo, and your neighbor comes around the corner, and the car slides when it hits ice. Okay, that information will be transmitted via LiDAR to other Volvos in the area. So with LiDAR, they can communicate vehicle to vehicle. So if the car up front is getting ready to slam, the computer's going to slam on the brakes, the LiDAR, your car is going to know that's going to happen as well. So car-to-car communication using radar. And then this brings me to one other thing to think about. If they're going to have these monitoring systems to make sure that you're looking at the road, you got your hands on the wheel when you need to be, what about maybe some of this technology for our regular vehicles to keep people paying attention to the road and decrease our distracted driving deaths? Because we all know the safest way to lower, the best way to lower fatalities and crashes on our roadways is to get rid of the human driver. I mean, eventually the computer will do it better, but negative reinforcement, but there's still people that clip their seatbelts behind them and do all different things. But yeah, so my rant is we need more. I hate this. The last thing I want to say is government intervention, but we share the roads with other vehicles, and Tesla's been too aggressive and they're rolling out and too, let's say, fair in my mind. I think they will eventually get there and they'll be part of it, but this needs to be regulated, I mean, and I think the European Union is doing a much better job of rolling this out in a very controlled and studied fashion.
Stephan, did I hear you correctly that in your rant, you actually gave GM positive credit and you suggested government intervention?
Yes.
I'm shocked, man.
I know. I know. It hurt me to say that, but it really did. But I enjoyed sitting in the General Motors Yukon AT4. I thought that was a very nice vehicle. So yeah, I know I beat on General Motors because I'm a Ford guy, but
they deserve it too. But
yeah,
but I do like what they've done with their controlling the perception of people that are going to utilize their system, and that's very important. Whereas Tesla gave the perception that it's, you can read a book going down the road. I'm checking my emails. This thing is good. Self-driving's awesome. Autopilot's great. And it's not so good without LiDAR. I really think that's the biggest problem with Tesla system is no LiDAR.
I think you make a fantastic point, and I it's not the first nor the last time that Elon is going to exaggerate to the point of just his own Tesla's ludicrous mode. He goes into ludicrous mode himself. And yeah, he's a phenomenally accomplished person, and no one can doubt that, or his level of genius, but his level of salesmanship and over exaggeration, overstating the facts, in order to get eyeball and or admirers, whatever it is, this adoration of Elon. But when you exaggerate to the point that someone loses their life, it's probably time to get out the thesaurus and see what autopilot really means, and to take it to a more realistic level, because there's only about 70 million others of us on the road that maybe aren't on autopilot within the Tesla, or even the LiDAR. For that example, like you said about Volvo, if it's Volvo to Volvo, they can avoid each other, like the same pole magnets missing each other. Until everybody can be replaced all at one time, this problem is going to exist. The coexistence of smart and or some level of autonomous driving and the normally distracted guy in a 20-year-old vehicle, there's going to be a tough transition to me. And personally, last point I'm going to say, I don't see one advantage whatsoever to hands-free driving. What am I missing here? Why would I not want my hands on the wheel? I really don't. I mean, what else am I going to be doing? Am I playing solitaire, or what am I doing?
Yeah, I completely agree. There's no why have, unless there's no steering wheel, it's fully, like Stephan has talked about, have the vehicle drive itself really, and there's no steering wheel. If that, and short of that, no, I want to have my hands on the wheel and I want to be driving. What I would love to see, and to Stephan's point earlier about LiDAR, there's two really famous Tesla autopilot accidents that resulted in fatality. There's this one and the one in Florida where the guy was watching Harry Potter and he crashed into the side of a semi truck. And both of those would have been prevented by LiDAR. So anyway, my point is what I want is to have my hands on the wheel. I want to be driving. And what I want from technology is the LiDAR to tell me, hey, there's a deer that you can't see.
Right.
Watch out. There's wildlife. There's a dog, or there's a pedestrian about to cross, or there's a cyclist. I want the technology to highlight that and help me avoid it, not avoid it itself. And if I have that technology that is better than my eyes, it improves my perception and my senses and can keep me out of danger. That's what I want. But I want my hands on the wheel. Yes, Adams, I agree with you.
And I love your thought because it gives you the hero trait that you don't have now. Seeing in the dark, faster response rate. I like that.
Let me tell you, I should have told people, listeners, what LiDAR stands for. It stands for light detection and ranging, and it's a remote sensing method that is pulsed laser. So it's pulsed laser that measures distances, variable distances. So it's sending a pulse laser to the vehicle in front of you or the stop vehicle, and it bounces back instantaneously, and it's measured the rate and time change, and it knows whether it's moving or stationary. So very important information. And the Volvo has car-to-car communication. It's not via LiDAR. I might have said that, but they have car-to-car communication. They'll exchange information, part of which is this LiDAR. But, Steve, I think, I agree with you totally. I don't mind driving, but I enjoy it. But I think the one time I wouldn't appreciate fully autonomous driving would be you're going on the interstate and traffic is slowing down, speeding up, slowing up, speeding down. Yeah, just to put my head back, look ahead of me, and let the car do that. I would not mind that at all. Or driving across Oklahoma on I-70, and there's not a car for miles. I wouldn't mind taking my hands off the wheel, just looking down the road, daydreaming a little bit, and let the car drive down the road. But other than that, I don't need the car to take me to the grocery store. I'll drive to the grocery store when I want to.
Yeah. Speaking of driving to the grocery store, Adams, you're going to talk about I would love to take this car to the grocery store. This is a car that just stopped production. I love it. I know you love it. Let's get into that. I would love to go to the grocery store in this car.
This is the best 202 mile per hour grocery getter you would ever want. This, boys and girls, is the swan song. Put your hand over your heart. Look somewhere toward Ingolstadt and realize that the Audi R8 has ceased production. This is a car near and dear to my heart. I think we all were pretty shocked at this remarkable vehicle that our former sedan maker Audi had just popped out with. And just a little bit of background on the car. The Audi R8 was preceded by, in its name, with the concept vehicle that appeared in racing, and it was the Le Mans prototype. That debuted in 1999 on the Le Mans racetrack. Their first effort at Le Mans landed them on the podium. Third place gets you on the podium. You still win the Rolex, and that put them on the podium, which is not easy to do. And again, we're thinking about, okay, this is Audi. Wait a minute. This is the people who make, the little sedans. And at that time didn't even make I guess a TT had come out in maybe 97 or so. But in any event, this is not really a sports car maker. They had four-wheel drive perfected. And so they win it outright the following year. Their second year, they win Le Mans. Then they win it 3 years in a row. Then they win it again. These are called R8s and the LMP, the Le Mans prototype cars. Then they let, quote unquote, Bentley win it in 2003, which is really an R8, just rebadged, as Steve pointed out a few episodes ago. It's still an Audi. Then they win again in 2004 and 2005. Then they adopt the alternative fuel thing, and they call it the R10, et cetera. Audi ended up winning Le Mans 13 times, but which is second only to Porsche, by the way, Ferrari being in third place. Let's keep that level in order. But the R8 show car was officially launched for the 2006 year. It was built on top of the Gallardo platform. So this car has Lamborghini / Audi DNA all under it. And it's one of the most brilliant platform sharing models ever. It initially had a 4.2 liter 4-cam car. And Steph, I'm not sure if you're showing, is that the picture of the car in the garage? Because I'm looking at notes here, and
that's
Yeah,
the
it's got
picture.
the-
That's the
that's the-
picture of your R8. in
yeah,
your
there you
garage.
go.
That's the Gen 1, which is the
That's
white
the-
one, which is yours. And then there was a blue one that's Gen 2.
There you go, exactly. And the Gen 1 car lasted till 2010. I enjoyed my Gen 1. That's a 4.2 with the 6-speed. I had that car about 2 years. They added a Spider in 2008, a higher performance GT version in 2011, and that was just before their one and only real facelift, which was 2012. And that's the same year they ended the V8 model. You know, interestingly enough, and we've all seen R8s, they all turn our head. They only sold a few hundred per year their entire 18 years in production for the US. Now, they sold more than that worldwide, but just for the US, they were just in the few hundred range. The only time they ever sold over 1,000 vehicles of the R8 was in 2011. They sold just over 1,100 vehicles. And that was particularly odd because anybody who follows maybe the 997.2 market and various other Ferraris in that time zone, that was a super low production year because the global financial crisis. People were not buying higher end, less usable vehicles, but the R8 sold decently well, 1,100 cars. They only sold 299 R8s in 2022, but once they announced the ending production, once again, we are seeing a car leave a production lineup like we're probably not going to see again. They doubled sales in the first quarter of 2024 versus 23. So the collectors who maybe had been sitting on the sidelines or people who may want to speculate and kind of hate that that's out there, but that's always out there, jumped on them. And I would just say kind of an ending, unlike the Ferrari or Lamborghini or the McLaren or, you know, some other supercar, to me, and I'd be interested in your guys' take on this, the R8 is kind of an approachable exotic. It's a little bit of a gentleman's super fast car. It competes with the crazy exotics in every single level except its flamboyance and just screaming, you know, for attention, look at me. Furthermore, the Audi can be serviced at a regular Audi dealer right alongside an A4 or a Q5 or whatever. And they're wonderful cars. They do a lot right. And it's not a 911. You know, if you want a practical sort of car that'll just haul rear, this is one of them. The 6-speed manual cars ended in 2015. They represent very low production numbers. And the speculator, collector, the person who likes the third pedal sitting down there on the floorboard may want to look at a 6-speed, which would be a 20 to 30% price premium over the what they call the R-Tronic. And the R-Tronic was a single clutch, which most people hate, till about 2014. I think it ended in 2014 and 2015. They came out with a double clutch. So it's a great car. You know, they predicted its demise many times. They said it was going to go away in 2014, then in 2018, then in 2022, they said we're done. And then they lasted till this year. And there you go. End of an era.
I think we always, you know, people say understated elegance. The R8 is understated performance. And I'm going to pull up a picture here. Steve-O and I had the pleasure for, I think it was my 40th birthday.
Oh,
here we go.
I had forgotten that.
We did the Audi sports car experience at Sonoma in 2011. Yeah, it was my 50th birthday. Sorry, I thought you.
We're always younger than we think.
And we got to drive. There's me driving the car. We got to drive the R8. And let me tell you what, you could jump in that car and take off and feel perfectly comfortable driving that car. It was easy to understand. It was easy to get the feel of the car. Fantastic performance. There's a young Dr. Steve-O.
That's
And
Steve going faster than you were.
yeah,
You can tell.
Doubtful.
I really enjoyed driving the R8. It was a fantastic day. And I never got squirrely, but we had a guy in front of us who going through the S's at Sonoma. Did he drop a tire? He got squirrely and went into the grass. And then good for Steve and I. He said, I think I'll sit the next session out. So Steve and I got to do basically independent sessions and not have to rotate cars. So that was really cool.
Yeah, he was, I think, an architect, and he was actually behind us, and he was behind me, and he got squirrely, and he did put a couple wheels off, and I just remember he looked ashen gray when we came into the pits.
That was your doctor's diagnosis?
Oh
That
yeah,
ashen.
He might have needed to change his shorts as well. He needed a stat GI consult for soiled shorts.
right? Yeah, he was in distress. So
He was one more tire away from needing a colonoscopy.
he was not he just looked very, very scared. But these are fast cars, and they're,
Yes.
what happens is you get in them and it's very reassuring. It's got a wide track, so it really is, and a pretty good wheelbase. So it's the dimensions kind of are very pro performance, and it's got all-wheel drive, which it really gives you that extra traction and safety. So you feel really good. And by the time you get in trouble, you're going really fast. And if you hit something, you're going to get hurt.
Yep.
Well, it's kind of like any mid-engine car. When a mid-engine car gets to the limit, even like the R8, they have such a short polar moment of inertia. And that's the old analogy. If you've got a dumbbell and you put take a bar and put the weights on the end and spin it, or bring the weights to the middle and spin it, it's easier to spin it when you put the weights in the middle. That's polar moment of inertia. And mid-engine cars have low polar moments of inertia because the weight is compact and central to the vehicle. So when they decide to let go, they let go quickly because that's the polar moment of inertia overcoming the friction of the tires. And when they snap on you, they go quick and they're very hard to recover.
Yeah, you might have less than a polar moment.
Yes, yeah, a
to
poop
actually
moment.
grab and,
Yeah.
and even what's that?
A poop moment.
Well, it's like a front or rear engine car. You can undercorrect and then recorrect, and with the mid engine car, you kind of don't know. It's a tiny bit of a mind of its own. I was going to say that Jackie Ickx, who won Le Mans 6 times, he said about the car, and I don't think he was paid to say it. He was not an Audi paid spokesperson at the time. He said it's the best handling car sold in the world. He said that in 2015. Wow. And I think that man might know. But they're a great car. Steve, I'd kind of be interested in a little bit of your super short summary because you're a 911 guy. What do you think about, because that was its main target. The R8 was kind of hoping to steal a 911 sale or two. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it was definitely aimed at the 911. It's before Volkswagen Group owned Porsche. So it was a 911 competitor. And basically, I like what Stephan said. It's accessible. And I think that's the right word. It's an exotic car, but it's not like a real exotic car. I'll give you an example of what I mean by that. So it has a 4.2 liter V8 engine as the base engine. You can get an A6 in that. You could get an A8 in that. It was kind of your standard Audi V8 engine at that time, and they just stuck it in a supercar. Of course, they tuned it up, but basically, this was an accessible car. How about talking about the doors? I don't know if you guys ever watched the show Silicon Valley, but there's a guy who becomes a tech billionaire, and he's a character. He's just this obnoxious guy. And he's so obnoxious, he comes out with his own brand of tequila called Tres Camas Tequila, which is hilarious. It's hilarious. So his accountant calls him, and he's like, he looks ashen. And one of the guys in the show says, "What happens is someone die?" He goes, "No, worse." He goes, "My accountant said I'm worth less than $1 billion." And he said, "Now I have to get a new car." And he could have been talking about the R8 because the doors open normally. He said, "I have to get a car with doors that open like this." He goes, "Not like this, not like this. I have to get doors that open like this. That's what the R8 is. It opens normally. The doors are normal, looks accessible. No one's really going to give it two looks. You take it to the Audi dealer to fix it. It has a regular Audi engine. That's my take on it. I think it's great.
It's a sleeper supercar, and you would never
It's-
be embarrassed driving it. You're going to get respect. People are going to think it's cool, but it's not like pulling up in a Lambo or a Ferrari or McLaren. It's like pulling up in an F-150 pickup truck that's, a Platinum, which is, $100,000 pickup truck. But people are like, no, it's F-150, no big deal.
Well, for the collectors out there, if you
Go ahead.
wait, I missed the pickup truck comment.
That's what the R8 is like driving. It's like driving an F-150. No, it's not.
Well, I will say that one of my friends who is among the wealthiest of people I probably will ever know in my life, one time called me up and he said, I'm thinking about getting an R8. And the reasons he was thinking about getting an R8 is probably along the lines of the pickup truck comment. He doesn't want to be noticed. He doesn't want to have the flashiest thing in the stable. He doesn't want to be the guy who gets looked at. He wanted a car. He is a crazy car guy. He loves automobiles, but he just didn't want the showiness. So he ended up getting a white R8. I think the speculators out there might be looking at these like what would be the one to get the 5.2, the V10 car, which was started off life as 525 horse, went to 565 in the plus. If you can get an early Gen 1 V10 6-speed, you have got a keeper. It would be preferable to maybe get one not in silver because that was the most of them, sort of like the BMW Z8, try to avoid the most common color. But, any of those cars in a 6-speed is a good car, and the late double clutch V10s is an incredible car. So
what do you think about the last rendition where they had the 2-wheel drive?
That was an interesting pull by a company known for 4-wheel drive.
Yes.
It's probably going to be one of those quirky things that collectors latch on to. I kind of don't understand it any more than I understand driving with your hands free. I don't get it. I want the 4-wheel. If I have 4 rings on the front, I want wheels driving the car.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
that's my thought.
That was a weird. It didn't make any sense.
That was weird.
Yeah. All right. Speaking of understated
Weird
and accessible, let's talk about Mansory. And Mansory is something that it's not a thing here in this country. It is very much a thing in the Arab world, in Dubai, for example, or UAE or something like that, or Qatar. You see tons of these. And it's like the car of footballers, these professional soccer players in Europe. They can't just get a Rolls Royce Cullinan. They have to get a Mansory version. And this is like a real thing around the world. China, you're going to see Mansories. This is a car that's been around since 1980, or a brand that's been around since 1989. They take a very expensive car. You can get them a Mercedes or even a BMW or a Porsche. But mostly these are Bentleys, Rolls Royces, and Maybachs. And they will transform this car into something that's very personal. But because this is like nouveau rich with a capital N, you're going to have these weird, I would say tasteless, but very just bizarre. Like here's a kind of dark blue two-tone Rolls Royce Cullinan with a mint green interior. You have these weird color combinations, and these cars go for $500,000 to $1 million. And it's really, really a thing. There was a footballer in England that crashed his, and somebody bought it as a salvage car for almost nothing. He's trying to bring it back. But the fact that it was a Mansory made it more desirable. It's just this weird phenomenon. You have these bizarre color combinations. They're very expensive. I just think it's terrible. But in a certain world, they're popular.
I don't get it. I can't. I'm going to say that this episode should be called the Adams Doesn't Get It episode, because I look at this and I fail to understand how this is a value add. I remember the 80s, and some of you do, some of you don't. who may be listening, but there were tuners galore like Koenig and B&B and Gimbala and Kramer who did things with German cars, most often Porsche. And they were looked at on the day like, oh my gosh, that is the best. That is the cover car. That is the one you want. That's the most modified looking thing. It's hand built, blah, blah. Their values went to nothing. And now they're sort of back a little bit as the oddity that is sort of quote, period, correct. But I look at these, I do not understand why anyone wants an interior the color of Scope mouthwash. It's hard for me to sort of get my head around it. And maybe they have some lasting value. Steve, I was shocked when you said that they'd been around since 1989. It looks like something that may have just come out. But I mean, who am I to say? The Arabs and the oil money that chase this, they have nothing to do with their millions. So why not?
I would say these are owned by histrionic narcissists. And histrionic means overly theatrical or melodramatic in character or style. And
this would not be the understated elegance you alluded to earlier, correct?
No, I guarantee you if the woman gets out, she's got 4 rings on every finger. If the guy gets out, he's got a giant gold diamond encrusted watch, and then he's got about 8 gold chains on his neck. And he's got on the giant Gucci glasses. It's just awful. It's just. Ugh.
I find it fascinating because if you're 60,
it is fascinating.
If you're 60 and you have money, this is the last thing you want. Apparently, if you're 26 and you have money, this is the first thing you want.
Steve, where else are these popular? Hit me.
Well, it's mostly, again, Dubai, Riyadh, these countries where you just have lots and lots of oil money and they like to flash it. You're going to see them in Hong Kong, Shanghai, and you're going to see them in Europe. A lot of them are in London. You see them in Paris. Again, classically, it's a football player and a professional athlete that has it. It has not caught on here. So you don't see Mansory much with the NFL or the NBA. It seems to be like London and Dubai are like the epicenter.
Mm-hmm.
Mm. Man.
That's the thing that makes you go,
I like it.
It's not worth a lot of time, but I thought it was worth mentioning because, again, most people have no idea. You said, I saw a Mansory Rolls Royce. Most people, even car people, will not know what you're talking about. But we know what they're talking about, and now our listeners do. It's just different.
It's too different for me to relate. I'll just, end it with that.
Yeah. All right. Why don't you close this out, Stephan? That's all we have for this week.
Hey, thanks for tuning in. If you're on YouTube watching, or if you're listening on Spotify or podcast, remember to like, listen, subscribe, hit the bell, leave comments, send in your questions, and we'll see you guys next week.